Have you ever noticed how the people who try the hardest to be loved often push love away, while those who seem at ease, detached, and unbothered somehow attract it effortlessly? There's a hidden law at work, and once you understand it, you'll realize the secret to becoming irresistible is not in doing more but in letting go. Control is the enemy of attraction. The more you cling, the more you chase. The more you try to bend others to your will, the further they slip from your grasp. Why? Because control is born of fear. Fear that you are not enough, fear that love might escape you, fear that without force, things will fall apart. But here's the truth: nothing outside of you determines your worth. What you carry within, the conviction that you are desired, chosen, and irresistible, commands the outer world to reflect it. Detachment is not indifference, it is supreme confidence. It is saying, I already am what I seek. I already have what I desire. When you release the need to control, you give space for others to flow toward you naturally. Like a magnet, you don't chase, you draw. Imagination is your secret weapon. See yourself as adored. Feel the joy of being the one they can't stop thinking about. Embody the version of you who is already celebrated, already loved, already irresistible. Then let it go. Stop watching, waiting, checking. Rest in certainty. The paradox is this: the less you try to control, the more control you truly have. When you live in the end, when you wear the feeling of being desired like a second skin, the world rearranges itself to match. People lean in, opportunities unfold. Love surrounds you, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. The power of assumption is one of the greatest secrets hidden in plain sight, yet most people never fully grasp its depth. To assume is not to wish, not to hope, and not to wait. To assume is to accept a reality as if it were already true and to embody it so fully within yourself that the external world has no choice but to conform. When you assume yourself to be already loved and valued, you shift the axis of your life from lack and longing to fullness and possession. The outer world, which is only a shadow of your inner convictions, faithfully mirrors the assumption you hold, whether you are aware of it or not. Imagine a person who constantly believes that they are unworthy of love. Every word, every action, and even the subtle energy they carry communicates desperation or fear of abandonment. Others pick up on it unconsciously and respond by distancing themselves or withholding affection. But when a person assumes themselves to be loved, when they wear the feeling of being adored as naturally as they wear their skin, everything about them changes. Their posture softens, their eyes shine with certainty, and their presence radiates security. This change does not come from external validation, but from the quiet power of assumption. People are then drawn to them because they reflect the stability and value that person has already accepted within. The assumption of being loved is not about controlling others or forcing someone to behave a certain way. It is about aligning with the truth within yourself and letting that truth project outward. Just as a mirror reflects whatever stands before it, so the world reflects the identity you claim for yourself. If you assume that you are cherished, cared for, and valued, then every interaction will bend to that reality. Even those who previously overlooked you may begin to treat you differently because they are no longer responding to the old version of you, but to the new one you have chosen to embody. Assumption requires imagination. It asks you to step into a scene in your mind where your desire is already fulfilled. Instead of imagining being chased, ignored, or rejected, you construct the inner image of being adored, respected, and deeply loved. You feel it until it becomes natural, until it no longer feels like pretending but like truth. The mind does not distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is experienced in the outer world. The moment you accept the feeling of being loved as your dominant state, you impress it upon your subconscious, and the subconscious faithfully externalizes it. This process is not about struggle or repetition in desperation. It is about calm persistence. You hold on to your assumption with quiet certainty, even when the outside world appears to show the opposite. For the outer world is slow to catch up, like a delayed echo. What you assume within always precedes what you will later see without. To demand instant results or to doubt because of temporary appearances is to return to the old state of lack. But to persist in the assumption is to guarantee its manifestation, for assumption, when sustained, hardens into fact. The power of assumption is also the key to freedom from manipulation. Many people try to earn love by bending themselves, by chasing others, by performing for validation. But when you assume that you are already loved, you bypass all of that effort. You no longer need to grasp, to beg, or to prove anything. The energy you carry becomes one of sufficiency, and sufficiency is magnetic. Others are drawn not to the desperate, but to the one who already knows they are desired. This magnetic quality is effortless. It is the natural byproduct of inner conviction. To live in assumption is to live from the end rather than toward the end. You no longer wait for someone else to show you affection in order to feel worthy. You start with worthiness. You no longer wait for someone to call you valuable in order to believe it. You begin with the belief. And from that assumption, the world bends and reshapes itself to match the image you have accepted within. It is never about forcing reality, but about aligning with it internally so reality has no choice but to reveal it externally. Detachment creates magnetism because it is rooted in the release of fear, control, and desperation. When you cling to someone or something, you send out an energy of lack, as though you are incomplete without the object of your desire. This energy is heavy, tense, and suffocating, and others instinctively pull away from it. Yet the moment you detach, you shift into a state of ease, and ease is naturally magnetic. People are drawn to those who embody self-assurance, not those who chase or cling. The paradox is clear: the less you feel the need to control, the more life flows toward you. Clinging comes from the belief that love, value, or fulfillment is scarce, and that unless you hold on tightly, it will slip away. But this very fear creates the conditions for loss, because what you fear most dominates your inner state and radiates outward. Detachment, on the other hand, is born of abundance. It is the quiet knowing that nothing can truly be taken from you, because what aligns with your inner conviction must inevitably find its way to you. To detach is to release the anxious grip on outcomes, and to stand firmly in the confidence that what is yours cannot pass you by. This calm conviction is what others experience as magnetism. When you detach, you no longer look for validation from the outside world. You are not waiting for a text, a call, a sign, or a person to prove that you are valuable. You already assume your value within, and therefore you no longer chase proof. This lack of need communicates strength and confidence. In relationships, people feel this energy immediately. The one who does not cling, the one who radiates certainty, becomes the one others naturally want to pursue. The shift is not in outer effort, but in inner state, and once the state changes, the outer world rearranges in response. Detachment is not coldness, nor is it indifference. It is not about shutting your heart or withdrawing affection. It is about offering love, attention, or desire from a place of fullness instead of lack. When you detach, you still care, but you no longer fear losing. You still desire, but you no longer depend on the desire to make you complete. This creates a lightness that others experience as freedom. Instead of feeling pressure or control, they feel space, and in that space, their own attraction grows. Just as nature abhors a vacuum, people are drawn toward the one who does not demand but simply exists in confidence. Detachment also restores balance to your imagination. When you are attached, you spend your mental energy worrying, checking, and repeating the same fears. This constant attention to lack reinforces the state of not having. But when you detach, you redirect your imagination toward the end state, the vision of already being loved, desired, and chosen. You no longer interrupt this vision with fear or contradiction. Instead, you let the inner image grow undisturbed. This calm persistence allows the subconscious to accept it, and once accepted, it must manifest outwardly. The magnetism you exude on the outside is simply the reflection of the assumption you hold within. In detachment, there is also an element of surrender. You release the need to know how or when something will happen. You no longer strain for details or chase control over timing. This surrender communicates unshakable confidence, and confidence is irresistible. People trust those who trust themselves. They follow those who walk in certainty without needing to justify, argue, or demand. The detached individual stands out precisely because they do not compete for attention. Their energy communicates that attention is already theirs by right. This aura draws others in without effort, because everyone is magnetically pulled towards certainty and ease. To embody detachment is to embody freedom. You free yourself from the prison of obsession, from the endless cycle of checking and doubting, and from the fear of loss. You also free others because they no longer feel the weight of your expectation or the burden of your need. In this freedom, attraction blooms naturally. The more you let go, the more you radiate ease, and ease is the foundation of true magnetism. Imagination is the blueprint of your reality, the silent architect behind every experience you encounter. What you vividly hold within eventually crystallizes without, because the outer world is nothing more than a reflection of the inner pictures you consistently entertain. When you imagine yourself as irresistible, adored, and magnetic, you are impressing this vision onto the deepest layers of your consciousness, and those impressions inevitably guide how others perceive and respond to you. The secret is that people do not truly see you as you are. They see you as you assume yourself to be, An assumption is built in imagination. Every interaction you have is first filtered through your self-image. If inwardly you imagine that you are overlooked, unwanted, or unworthy, you will carry yourself in ways that confirm that picture. Your tone may lack conviction, your posture may shrink, and your energy may communicate hesitation. Without words, others pick up on this inner state and respond accordingly. But if your imagination is filled with images of yourself as captivating and irresistible, you automatically embody confidence. Your presence communicates authority and charm without effort, because you are simply living out the role your imagination has scripted. The imagination does not operate only when you intentionally visualize. It is active every moment of your life. The conversations you rehearse in your head, the scenarios you play out before bed, the daydreams that occupy your mind, all of these are blueprints being drawn on the canvas of reality. If those inner rehearsals are filled with doubt, rejection, and longing, then your subconscious accepts that script as truth and directs life to reflect it. But if you deliberately guide your imagination to paint scenes of being loved, respected, and pursued, you install a new design into your subconscious, one that inevitably takes form in the physical world. To harness imagination as a blueprint requires discipline, but not strain. It is not about forcing images with desperation, but about gently returning your mind to the end state whenever it wanders. Imagine the version of yourself who is already irresistible. See yourself walking into a room and commanding attention without saying a word. Feel the warmth of being admired, the joy of being chosen, the certainty of being valued. Let these feelings saturate your imagination until they become natural. The more natural they feel within, the faster the outer world bends to reflect them. Imagination also works through emotion. It is not enough to create a lifeless picture of being adored. The power lies in feeling it. When you feel the joy of being irresistible, your subconscious cannot distinguish it from physical reality. It accepts the feeling as fact and organizes circumstances, encounters, and relationships to match it. This is why people who deeply believe in their charm or attractiveness often appear magnetic to others, even when they do not fit conventional standards. Their imagination has created a self-concept so strong that the world simply follows their lead. What you imagine about yourself is always stronger than what others think of you. External opinions cannot override your inner conviction unless you accept them. If you imagine yourself as irresistible, the criticism or indifference of others bounces off, because it does not match your inner blueprint. Eventually, those same people may shift their perception, not because they suddenly discovered something new about you, but because your self-concept commanded them to see you differently. The imagination precedes recognition, and recognition follows the assumption you have sustained within. The beauty of imagination is that it places creation back into your hands. You do not have to wait for someone else to validate you, to notice you, or to declare your worth. You can imagine it now and live in the certainty of it. The world cannot help but conform because it has no reality of its own apart from what consciousness impresses upon it. Every time you choose to imagine yourself as irresistible, you are laying down another brick in the structure of your outer reality. Over time, that structure becomes so firm that it is impossible for others not to respond to it. To master imagination is to master the blueprint of attraction, magnetism, and influence. What begins as an inner picture becomes the stage upon which your life unfolds. The secret is not to wait for proof in order to believe, but to believe through imagination until proof appears. In this way, you do not chase validation from others, but lead them effortlessly to reflect the image you have already embraced within. Effortless receiving versus struggle is the dividing line between a life of constant resistance and one of natural flow. The moment you try to control outcomes with forced tension or anxiety, you send out an energy of resistance that pushes away what you desire. Struggle is rooted in fear, the fear that unless you act, manipulate, or chase, you will not receive. Yet this very fear becomes the barrier that blocks manifestation. On the other hand, when you rest in certainty, when you know within yourself that what you desire is already yours, you allow life to deliver it in the smoothest, most natural way. Certainty creates ease, and ease is the state in which attraction happens without strain. Consider the difference between someone who begs for attention and someone who assumes attention is naturally theirs. The one who begs is tense, overthinking every word, watching constantly for signs, and exhausting themselves in the process. They struggle because they are convinced that love or approval must be earned through effort. But the one who rests in certainty speaks and acts with ease. They are not consumed with whether they are loved, because they have already accepted that they are. This ease makes them magnetic, while the beggar repels through desperation. The only difference is the state of consciousness each has chosen to inhabit. Effortless receiving does not mean passivity or inaction. It means inspired action flowing from inner conviction rather than anxious compulsion. Struggle arises when you believe you must do more, push harder, or control every detail to make things happen. But control is an illusion. No amount of grasping can force the universe to deliver what you refuse to believe in. Effortless receiving begins with the assumption that the outcome is already secured. When you live in the end, when you walk as though it is done, your actions align naturally with fulfillment rather than struggle. Resting in certainty is a state of trust. It is trusting the unseen over appearances, trusting your inner vision over external delays. The outer world is always slow to reflect the inner change. Those who struggle panic when they see no immediate evidence. They abandon their conviction and return to force, only to perpetuate resistance. But those who remain calm, who persist in the inner knowing without needing constant proof, inevitably receive. Certainty has a magnetic quality that bends reality toward it. Struggle dissipates energy, while certainty consolidates it into power. Another key difference between struggle and effortless receiving is the emotional state they generate. Struggle produces anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion, emotions that lower your energy and cloud your perception. In this state, even when opportunities arise, you are too overwhelmed to recognize or act on them clearly. Effortless receiving produces peace, gratitude, and joy in advance, emotions that align you with higher possibilities. In this state, doors open naturally, people respond favorably, and what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. The world conforms most quickly when you are least attached to forcing it. Effortless receiving also rewrites your relationship with time. In struggle, time is an enemy. Every day without results feels like failure. In certainty, time is irrelevant. You know it is already yours. So the when and how no longer matter. This detachment collapses delays because you are no longer energizing lack. Struggle feeds on waiting and watching, while certainty feeds on fulfillment. By choosing the latter, you align with the version of reality where your desire is already present, and soon enough the physical world reflects that choice. It is important to recognize that effortless receiving is not laziness. It is the most powerful stance because it places authority within. Struggle looks outward, constantly measuring, grasping, and demanding. Receiving looks inward, affirming that the source of all creation is already within, and that nothing external can add to or take away from that truth. From this stance, you interact with the world with calm assurance, and this assurance is what makes others trust, love, and follow you. To live in effortless receiving is to live as though the promise is already fulfilled. You no longer chase but attract, no longer beg but command, no longer exhaust yourself but rest in conviction. Struggle is the language of doubt, ease is the language of certainty. And certainty always calls forth the very reality it claims. Identity first, results follow is the unshakable law that governs every experience of your life. You never receive what you merely want, you only receive what is consistent with who you believe yourself to be. Identity is the root, and results are the fruit. When you try to change circumstances without first changing the self that interacts with them, you are fighting against the very structure of reality. But the moment you shift identity, the outer world reshapes itself to match. If you believe yourself to be irresistible, magnetic, and deeply valued, others cannot help but feel that truth the instant they come into contact with you. The self-concept you carry is like a hidden broadcast. You do not need to speak it aloud or explain it. Every gesture, every expression, and every word you utter carries the weight of your inner identity. People do not respond to what you say as much as they respond to who you are being. Someone who secretly believes they are unworthy may say all the right words, yet their energy communicates doubt. Someone who believes they are irresistible may say little at all, yet their presence radiates confidence and draws others in. The outer results are simply echoes of the identity already accepted within. This principle explains why so many efforts rooted in force or manipulation fail. You can try to act confident, repeat affirmations, or chase validation, but if beneath the surface you still believe yourself to be lacking, the results will always betray that belief. Identity cannot be tricked or bypassed. The world is a mirror reflecting not what you pretend to be, but what you assume yourself to be at the core. True transformation, therefore, begins not with action but with identity. To live as irresistible, you must first accept that identity within your imagination. You must see yourself as chosen, adored, and admired, and not as a temporary fantasy, but as your natural state. This imagined self, once felt consistently, becomes your inner reality. You no longer question if others see you as attractive, you know it as fact within yourself. This knowing alters everything. Your tone becomes certain, your movements graceful, your energy calm and magnetic. Others pick up on these shifts instinctively because the subconscious communicates more powerfully than words. Identity also determines what opportunities you recognize and pursue. A person who identifies as unwanted overlooks signs of love and dismisses gestures of affection, reinforcing their belief in lack. A person who identifies as irresistible interprets the same gestures as confirmation of their worth and leans into them, reinforcing their belief in abundance. The external world does not change first, perception changes first. By shifting identity, you shift perception, and by shifting perception, you invite new outcomes into being. It is vital to understand that identity is not something you wait for evidence to confirm. You choose it, you claim it. You inhabit it long before the world mirrors it back. Those who wait to see results before adopting a new identity remain stuck in their old state, because results always follow identity, never precede it. The moment you decide within, I am irresistible, I am valued, I am chosen, you begin planting the seeds of that reality. Persisting in that inner stance ensures the seeds must grow into outer results, for the law cannot fail. The most magnetic people are not those chasing approval, but those who carry certainty about who they are. They walk into a room not asking to be noticed, but knowing they will be. They speak not to impress, but to express, because their identity is already secure. This quiet confidence is more attractive than any forced charm or surface-level tactic. It is the natural byproduct of living in alignment with the truth you have assumed about yourself. When you live as irresistible, others feel it instantly, because identity communicates beyond words. It speaks through presence, through energy, through an aura that cannot be hidden. The world is compelled to treat you as you treat yourself, to recognize in you what you have already recognized in yourself. Identity shapes the lens through which others see you, and once you embody a new self-concept, they have no choice but to respond in harmony with it. Living in the end is the practice of assuming the state of already having what you desire and making it your dwelling place in consciousness. Instead of longing, waiting, or questioning when something will happen, you step into the reality where it is already done. By embodying the feeling of being adored, desired, and respected right now, you bypass the endless resistance of doubt and uncertainty, and you allow life to rearrange itself in perfect alignment with your inner conviction. The end becomes your home, and from that home, everything you need naturally arrives. Most people live in the state of wishing. They see what they want as distant, as something to be earned or struggled for, and this creates a constant sense of lack. The more they wait for proof, the more they feed the idea that they do not yet have it. Living in the end breaks this cycle because it removes the gap between desire and possession. Instead of saying, I hope one day to be loved, you feel now, I am already loved. Instead of saying, I wish people would respect me, you dwell in, I am respected, I am admired, I am valued. By shifting from waiting to being, you claim the result before it arrives, and by the law of consciousness, it must arrive. Living in the end is not pretending or lying to yourself. It is choosing the state you want to embody and accepting it as fact within your inner world. The subconscious does not argue with appearances, it accepts what you impress upon it. If you impress the feeling of already being adored, your subconscious goes to work bringing about conditions and encounters to match. Others begin responding to you differently, opportunities open, and what once seemed out of reach becomes ordinary, because the inner conviction left no room for contradiction. The practice of living in the end requires imagination. You create scenes in your mind that imply the fulfillment of your desire, and you enter them as though they are happening now. If you want to be desired, you imagine conversations where people speak of how magnetic you are. If you want to be respected, you see yourself being honored, admired, or treated with dignity. If you want to be adored, you feel the joy of being cherished. The important point is to not place the experience in the future, but to accept it as your current reality. By living there mentally and emotionally, you make it inevitable physically. This way of being dissolves resistance because it removes the anxious question of when. When you live in the end, there is no waiting, it is already done. Doubt has no foothold because you are no longer seeking confirmation. You walk as though it is yours, and this confidence shifts everything about your presence. People notice it without knowing why. You do not chase or demand because you already feel full. Fulfillment radiates from you, and this radiance is what magnetizes others. Living in the end also changes how you interpret reality. Instead of seeing obstacles as signs of failure, you interpret them as temporary appearances within a process that is already complete. Because you know the end is certain, you are not shaken by appearances. This calm persistence is the essence of faith. It keeps you anchored in your desired state even while the external world is still catching up. Over time, persistence in the end state makes it solid, until it hardens into fact. The most powerful aspect of living in the end is the freedom it gives you. You no longer need to manipulate people, force circumstances, or anxiously monitor results. You simply live as though it is done. And because you live that way, life must mirror it back. You become irresistible not by effort but by conviction. You become respected not by demanding it but by assuming it. You become adored not by chasing love but by embodying the self that is already adored. The end you choose to dwell in becomes the life you inevitably experience. So let go of control. Stop chasing, stop clinging. Stop trying to manage every detail. Step into the quiet certainty that you are already irresistible. Because the moment you stop needing it, the world has no choice but to reflect it. And that is the secret power that makes you unforgettable.